Trevor Zegras is finally signed by the Anaheim Ducks. We'll talk all about it on this bonus edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this bonus edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jason J.D. Hernandez. I've been covering hockey for well over a decade, and this, as you may have noticed, is only audio because, as I've mentioned several times, I'm in the middle of moving right now, and this kind of it didn't come out of nowhere, but it kind of came at a weird time where I wasn't able to record with any videos, so this is going to be audio only, but, we'll make the best of what we can, because this news is too big to not put an episode out. Now, I did already have an episode out that was recorded at Acrisure Arena. There is another Acrisure Arena episode that will come out later today, but for now, we have a bonus episode, because we've got to talk about the deal that went down less than 24 hours ago. And that was the deal that Trevor Zegras has finally been signed by the Anaheim Ducks. Why they couldn't do this at least a couple days before, that way I could talk all about it at Acrisure. Oh well, it is what it is. But here are the details. Trevor Zegras officially signed by the Anaheim Ducks, 3 years, $5.75 million per season. So officially it is a 3-year, $17.25 million. That's a big deal, and that's actually a very good number, and I want to talk about that first. But before we talk about the numbers, just want to go over a couple of quotes. This is from the press conference and press release, and there was a lot of quotes to kind of delve into on this one. First, again, 345.75. Here was Pat Verbeek talking about it. Quote, "I see great things for Trevor. I think when we look at him, we want him to develop a greater two-way game. There's going to be a lot of great things that he can learn from Coach Greg Cronin. The sky is the limit for Trevor. It's just a matter of him coming in with a great attitude and putting in the work on both sides of the ice." End quote. Now, that's pretty interesting because he's already got a very well-rounded offensive game. I did like the fact that Pat Verbeek even mentioned a two-way game. And this is interesting for a number of reasons. There is the notion that Trevor Zegras plays no defense. No, Trevor Zegras plays some defense, but it's not entirely inaccurate that he needs to work on his defensive game. That's not inaccurate at all. And for Pat Verbeek to come in and say, yeah, that's something that we want him to really develop. I mean, keep in mind, Trevor Zegras is still a very young player. He's still got a little bit of untapped potential in his game. And I think we could see a lot of great things from Trevor Zegras down the line. Another quote, this one also comes from Pat Verbeek, and it's on how they came about the number. Quote, "We had established a 3-year deal from the early onset, and as I've mentioned before, it's a process to go through, which we've had a lot of discussions over the last month, and it finally got to a point where we were kind of dialed into the area of the contract where we were going to settle. At the end of the day, it closed, and it closed fast." End quote. So that quote indicating not so much a stalemate, but that it was moving along. But at least they finally ended fast. If it didn't end fast, this may not have happened until Wednesday, potentially Thursday of this week. So there you go. Yeah, another quote from GM Pat Verbeek. "We're very pleased to be able to get Trevor signed and back on the ice where he belongs. We view Trevor as a critical and valued player and member of our organization and can't wait to see the next chapter in his career." End quote. Cool. I kind of like that a little bit. So, coach is pretty happy. I know the coach, Greg Cronin, is excited to have Trevor Zegras back on the roster. The rumor is that Zegras is going to join the team for the latter part of training camp. He's already headed to SoCal. Obviously not going to play tonight against the LA Kings, and might not play the game at the Ponda, might play the game at TCC, Tucson Convention Center, for the Ducks' final tune-up against those hated Coyotes. I'm going to be honest here. If I were Trevor, I wouldn't play that game. I think I'll go more into that a little bit later. But it's all indications that Trevor Zegras is going to make the opening night roster. So there goes my roster prediction for that one. Because honestly, I thought this would go into next week. But as mentioned by GM Pat Verbeek, this one closed fast. So sounds like they really wanted to get this done as soon as possible and avoid having Z miss any time. I can't say I blame him for that. I wouldn't want Zegras to miss out on a lot of time myself. So good call to just get it over with, get the contract signed, and once again, Trevor Zegras, a 3-year deal to stay with the Anaheim Ducks. All right, we're going to head into the first intermission, and I'll have some more thoughts on when Zegras should play and all that jazz. So we'll get some more of that on the other side. And now, a word from eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to episode number 766 of Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, you're locked in with Jason JD Hernandez. As you may have noticed, no video on this episode, but we'll be back with another episode from Acrisure Arena later today. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Had someone crash the podcast for a few minutes, and it was fun. It was a fun time. All right, so let's talk more about the contract itself. There was the rumor that went out about 3-4 weeks ago that the Ducks were only offering about $4 million per season. Looking back, I don't know how much stock I put in that rumor. And a couple people on Twitter were saying it's probably more around between $5 million and $7 million, which I find a little more believable. But either way, if the Ducks were only offering $5 million and Z's camp was $7 million, this is still a good middle number and honestly a very team-friendly number to land on Trevor Zegras because he is one of your franchise players. I shouldn't say the franchise player because now the Ducks have at least a couple of potentially franchise players on their roster. I mean, Troy Terry is a franchise player. Mason McTavish could be a franchise player. Leo Carlson could also be a franchise player. But Trevor Zegras, I mean, he's one of the faces of the NHL. And even if the Ducks were only offering him $5 million, I mean, it's fine, but it's not what Zegras wants. And I feel that this number is pretty fair. And it's a good number to have flexibility for the Ducks right now. With this signing, the Ducks now have the ability to have a good signing which we will talk about in the third segment, and also gives them flexibility in case the Ducks wind up with a really, really good start to the season. And dare I say this, let's say the Ducks just somehow get really hot. Go with me on this, all right? Say they have a hot start somehow, and they wind up wanting to buy at the deadline. Imagine that. I mean, I'm not saying it will happen, but I'm saying just in case. The Ducks will have a lot of cap space because right now the Ducks have over $10 million in cap space available. Over $10 million. That's a good amount, folks. That could give them the potential to do that, buy some players, or let's say the Ducks have another terrible season and another terrible start to the season and they can't do anything. Well, you know what? This will give the Ducks the ability to take on a couple of bad contracts again, but also potentially get some more draft picks in this year's draft again. Now, getting more draft picks is never a bad thing, and at least the Ducks could have some compensation for some of those trades that could happen. I mean, there's going to be a few trade targets from the Ducks this season if they do not have a good start to the season. Adam Henrique, certainly a trade target. 1 year left on his contract. That's a big number, but if it's trade deadline, some teams are willing to take that on at the end. Jakob Silfverberg, he's only got 1 year left on his contract. He could help some other team out there. That could be a friendly contract. How about Ilya Lyubushkin? He's got 1 year left on his contract. He was traded to the Ducks last season. He could be traded from the Ducks this season. So while the Ducks could lose some money there, they could also gain a couple of bad contracts in addition to some draft picks, because that's what they've done the past couple of seasons. So with that cap space, there's definitely that potential or the ability to have that happen later on. So that's where I think it is friendly, and that's where I think this benefits the Ducks right now. And considering it is only a 3-year deal, and I've talked about this in the past, according to Cap Friendly, the salary cap could go up significantly. It could go up to $87.5 million next season. In 3 years, the salary cap could easily go up to $92 million. $92 million. That is $8.5 million more than it is right now. In 3 years, there's a potential for a massive payday for Trevor Zegras, especially if he develops the way we think he's going to develop. That would be his age 25 contract, and we're looking at a very long-term deal possible. He could have a 7-8 year contract that would take him to 32, 33 years old. And that's fine. That's fine for the Ducks to give him that long-term contract for the prime of his career. I mean, that's where you could see an 8x8 or a 7x9 or something potentially with those numbers. I mean, that's a problem for us later, but we don't have to talk about that. That's a problem for future Ducks. Future Ducks can worry about that later, but present Ducks can worry about this contract right now. But I'm always looking ahead and always looking forward, and that's a possibility that could happen for Trevor Zegras. So maybe something to watch out for in a couple of years with a lucrative contract extension. All right, we're going to head into the second intermission right now. Got a couple more things to talk about contract-wise. And, I forgot to mention when I would like to see him play. I don't think Z should play against the Coyotes Roadrunners this preseason, given all the nastiness that happened after this last preseason game, given the history between these two teams, given how much Trevor Zegras, we'll say, dislikes the Coyotes. I don't think it would be wise for him to play those last two preseason games. You don't want any trouble there. All right, that's my final thought on that. Second intermission, I'll talk more about contract stuff. Stay locked in. And now a word from AG1. Now, I gave AG1 a try because I wanted to take control of my health. I did not like taking vitamins, and I wanted a single solution that helps support my body and covers my nutritional bases every day, and I wanted better gut health. So I started AG1, drank it before the New York Marathon, and made me feel really good. Had a solid time despite record-breaking heat and record-breaking humidity. I managed to survive that race and do pretty well on it. So if you want to take it for yourself, if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL Network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL Network. Check it out. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Jason J.D. Hernandez. All right, let's talk more about other contract stuff and, what could potentially happen there. So I just mentioned Trevor Zegras last couple segments, but there is one other Duck that still has not been signed. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the, other player that's not signed, and that's someone who shares my initials, JD, Jamie Drysdale. Well, my first and middle initials are JD, his first and last name, but anyway, Jamie Drysdale still has not been signed yet, and we actually got a quote from Pat Verbeek about that, about Jamie Drysdale's contract stuff, and here's what he said. Quote, "We're going through a process. It's a little longer, but we're going through the same process as Trevor." End quote. Interesting. All right. So a little snippet there, but sounds like Jamie Drysdale is going to get signed pretty soon. Z went through the process of coming to a number and got there. I don't think Jamie Drysdale is going to get even close to 5.75. Jamie Drysdale would still be a restricted free agent with this next contract. So I would assume that Drysdale is probably going to look at a 3-year deal himself, probably in the neighborhood under $4 million, which would still give the Ducks at least $6 million in cap space. I don't know what rumors I've heard. Some of the rumors I've seen online is that Jamie Drysdale could get as much as $4 or $5 million, could get as little as $2 million per season. I'm going to be honest. I don't know if it's going to go to $2 million. That seems like such a lowball offer that I don't think that would actually happen. But I could easily see $3 to $4 million for Jamie Drysdale in this next contract, and it could easily be a 3-year contract. It could be a 2-year contract. Either way, the Ducks are not going to break the bank right now and put themselves in a position of vulnerability with cap space. And there's no reason to do that. And also for Jamie Drysdale, because the salary cap is going to go up significantly, if he can have another full and healthy season where he shows marked improvement, then you could potentially see those numbers go up a lot for his next contract, which would be his year 24 contract. Jamie Drysdale is only 21 right now. If the Ducks were to give him a 2 or 3 year deal, his next and bigger contract would be when he's 23, 24 years old. That would be the big payday for Jamie Drysdale, but it really does depend on what he does this coming season. It depends on how much he has developed defensively. It depends on health. His first season, he did score 32 points, 81 games. Last season, he got injured almost right off the bat. The leaves had barely changed color, and he unfortunately got hurt and was out for the rest of the season. Didn't even score a point last season. So if Jamie Drysdale is looking to get that big contract, he's got to hope that he's healthy for the rest of the season and hope that he can get a good improvement We're looking at the neighborhood of potentially 40 points this coming season if he remains healthy. He was really improving a lot towards the end of his rookie season, and you could tell that there was something there. His defense was improving a lot more. His skating got better. His stick got better. And even in the limited training camp that we've seen so far, or not training camp, but last year's training camp, rather, he was looking stronger. Now, we haven't seen him on the ice yet. We've seen clips of him on the ice elsewhere, not in Ducks camp, but he's looking a little stronger already. So already beginning to fill out as much as possible. And this is nothing but a good thing for the Ducks. This is something that they definitely need. Like, I don't want to say they need JD, but it's always good to have more young defensemen on the team. So that's something that I'm very hopeful as far as Ducks are concerned. Plus, as far as defensemen, they got a lot of young defensemen that are coming up. Jackson Lacombe has looked really good. I have high hopes for Jackson Lacombe. He could pair up very well with Jamie Drysdale down the line. And you've got the other slew of young defensemen. Mintyukov, Hellison, Luno, who I am very high on, by the way. Noah Warren, Olin Zellweger, Tyson Hines. That's a long list of potential future defensemen for the Ducks. Lyubushkin, probably gone after this season. Robert Haig, he had the game-winning goal the other night. He might be gone. Colton White, he might be gone. Vakanainen, he might be gone as well. So this leaves a lot of room for future defensemen, and that includes Jamie Drysdale, who I think should absolutely be a part of their future. All right, we're going to wrap up this episode of Locked On Ducks. Don't forget, we have another episode coming later today, that one coming from Acrisure Arena. So make sure y'all check that out. It's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I think you all will enjoy it too. All right. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, this podcast is free and available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, ad-free on Amazon, and also on SiriusXM. Who knows? You could hear these dulcet tones on SiriusXM. You could follow me on Twitter at StimpyJD. The show's Twitter is at LO_Ducks. And stay tuned later today. We'll have another episode from Acrisure Arena, talking a little bit more about the Ducks' last preseason victory, the thrilling 5-4 win against the Arizona Coyotes. And it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. So once again, thank you all for your continued support. It is so greatly appreciated. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason JD Hernandez saying have a great rest of the morning and afternoon. Please remember to be safe out there, be kind to one another, and Ducks fly together.